Welcome to Vintage Bricks. James here. We are doing a multi-week series. I'm very excited. We're going to get into the classic 2007 to 2009 fantasy era sets. There's 4 factions, which we'll go over the weeks here.
What are the 4 factions?
Oh, Gene, that is a great question. Faction number 1 over here is the human guys, the crowned king and his group, and they of course had a castle, and you can see the castle in the background here. Kind of put part of it together, and we'll work on that. And they had their own dragon, and they had the most famous set of this whole series. Happens to be a village, which is behind me over here. You can see the village. And we'll unravel that. So that's faction number 1, the humans, the Crown Knights.
What's faction number 2?
Okay, great. Another fine question. Number 2 are another good guys, are the Dwarves. And they, of course, mined, and they were trying to mind their own business. But if you got in their way, obviously, they had access. They were a fine group there, and we'll unravel them.
I just thought of like the 7 dwarfs. Weren't they miners too? Are dwarfs supposed to traditionally be miners? Is that sort of a dwarf occupation?
And that is, I think, a fantasy story too. The 7 dwarfs, a different franchise though. I don't think that's
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So then, what about number 3?
Number 3 behind me are the trolls. So the troll faction. These were now we're full blown fantasy here. Reminds me a little bit like Lord of the Rings or some of the other, Hobbit things. But these guys were evil, and so they had little trolls and big trolls. So have you ever heard the term orc before?
No.
Well, they're not technically called orcs, but the little guys, they're the smart ones. They run this whole show, and so orcs are a little smaller than the big working trolls, and they had their own ship, which you might see over to the side there.
I just thought I have heard of orc before.
Ship over there.
Mork from Orc. On Mork and Mindy. I wonder if that's where they got that.
People who are listening have to go back in time to remember Mork and Mindy.
Okay.
Okay, that's pretty funny. So they had their own castle too. So right behind them up there is a castle.
They look very angry.
There's a whole bunch sitting there too.
So this is there's some more. So this is their castle behind the.
They have their own castle and some other things. So we'll put those together when we get to that faction.
All right, and then 4.
And the final one, of course, are the skeletons. The skeletons, they had this really cool ship we're going to put together. And they also had this tower where they were holding the princess captive. And the guy holding the leader of this happens to be the evil wizard. And maybe he's the one who brought them back to life. I don't know. He just kind of looks evil. And so as we go through this series, maybe 5 or 6 weeks, maybe a little longer, we'll go through these and then put together this huge battle scene at the end with all the different sets.
Sounds like Game of Thrones, bringing the skeletons to life here. The evil wizard.
It does
So
sound
this
like
is
a
their
Game of
vehicle
Thrones.
here?
Well, that's one of them. That's like an attack wagon they had. They had lots of little vehicles. The orcs were tricky little rascals.
Sounds like it.
That's what we're doing this next few weeks. So join us as we work through these. I think we have about 10 sets to go through, plus the giant, battle scene at the end. Thanks for visiting Vintage Bricks. Hang in there and hope you enjoy this summer of the fantasy era. Please subscribe to Vintage Bricks and you'll be getting our weekly installment of the fantasy era over the next few weeks, like we mentioned. Thank you.